Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming back to another episode of Declan's Autism Journey podcast. As always, I'm really excited you're here. Today, I wanted to spend some time talking about where Declan is right now and really kind of how we got there. If you listen to one of my recent episodes with Nancy, our amazing RPM specialist that we met through Dr. Malillo in New York, I described her as just being so cool, the coolest autism mom. And when I say cool, I don't mean like hip. I mean like she was so at peace with her son's diagnosis, with where he was. And I just remember thinking, how is she so cool about all of this? How is she not in panic mode like I am? And, certainly Nancy and I have become great friends and we've talked a lot about this. And I'm actually so excited to think that I'm even halfway to where she is. And it's really only because I know how smart Declan is. I think, one of the reasons for doing this podcast, the biggest reason to share our story was to hopefully help other moms just starting out and feel less scared and less alone, because those were the really gross and scary and hard feelings that I had when I was just starting out, and just breaks my heart to think that there's others out there going through this. And so, I want to talk about where we're at and where I'm at as his mom and my emotional journey. It's a roller coaster. There are still difficult days. Declan is still non-speaking too. I just want to circle back to that. I have a colleague who has a son on the spectrum. He is verbal, unreliably, but still verbal, still can ask for things, can say when something hurts or doesn't feel well. And so she and I have shared a lot about our boys. And, the other day we were talking and she's like, so she's like, you're like literally saying non-speaking, like no words. Declan doesn't say anything. And I thought, yes, of course he's non-speaking. Like that's what I've been saying. And it made me realize though, how difficult that is for others to maybe even wrap their mind around. Because it's so different, right? Our little ones typically talk so much. Like I remember saying to my oldest, by 7:00 at night, like, okay, you've asked mommy, your quota of questions for the day. Like I've got nothing left, or who can be quiet the longest. And, with Declan, it's so different, like I just pray every day for those words to come. But it made me think, like, okay, even though she and I have talked about this a lot, she still hadn't wrapped her mind fully around Declan being completely nonverbal, and non-speaking. And he still is. However, thanks to RPM, rapid prompting method, Speller's method, we know Declan is cognitively not only intact, but superior. Really next level things that it's difficult for us to almost wrap our minds around. And even though I've been saying for probably a couple months now, like, oh no, Dec's a genius. Yeah, I know that. Totally cool with it. I still find myself using like the mind blown emoji a lot as I share new things that I'm learning that he knows, or that I'm realizing he knows. And so it really is fascinating. So all the non-speakers, we have to get them a mode of communication. And so I just want to talk about where Declan is with his communication. He's still not open. We are still really practicing being precise with our spelling. And so he's currently still only on 3 stencil boards with the alphabet broken up, and I actually have them here. And so this is what they look like. So it's A through I, and then J through R, and S through Z. And we use these, and he spells things, and I've shared a lot. I've started videotaping every single session I do with him because I want to have it not only for us to look back at, as once he's open and fully communicating and has access to a 26 letter board, but I also recognize that where we are on our journey is helping others, and it's framing it for like Declan's educators. Even for my sister, I sent her some, video the other day and was like, check this out. Dec knows all the capitals in alphabetical order. He knows the state abbreviation, state births. I mean, it just was like, mind blown isn't even accurate, right? Like, it's so much more than that. But, I think that's where this podcast comes into play, is because when we started out on this journey, and I've said many times, I really thought he had such a significant cognitive impairment. And I would like test him by being like, Dec, go turn the light on. And if he didn't turn the light on, I'd burst into tears. And he didn't turn the light on. And so I thought his cognitive ability matched his output. And those were the really dark things that kept me up at night, was thinking, okay, if he is mentally challenged, what does that look like for him? Like, wow, that is going to be such a hard road for not only him, but for all of us, for his brothers. What happens when we're gone, Tim and I? Again, those were the things that really kept me up at night. And always, of course, was he going to be treated appropriately? Who's going to take care of him like mommy does, and daddy? When my other boys step in, what happens to him right now if, God forbid, something happened to Tim and I? And I knew we have such an amazing family that I knew that my children would be fine. He would be taken care of, but those were still the really big, scary things that kept me up, because if you don't have your mental faculties, life is even that much harder. And so now I recognize, though, that he's like Stephen Hawking. And so those fears and worries about his cognitive ability are just totally out the window. They're just not even in my frame of reference ever anymore. Nor do I let them be in anyone's frame of reference, or can they use the words, cognitively impaired or intellectually disabled when it comes to Declan. And so, one example is, I think we're all kind of like coming around to this in our own time. Like, I'm mom, so I'm 100% already, like, I've been on this train for a long time. My husband has too, but my oldest, who's 12, is kind of like, he's just kind of like, what? Like, I don't know. He still doesn't talk. He doesn't have typical mannerisms and behaviors. We're still seeing a lot of stimming. And so, my new favorite saying is outsides don't match insides. And so, I could just keep saying that over and over again. And my oldest came to a speller's lesson with us. And the way it goes is like they read something. It's a real story. Like, so the other day we were reading about the Eagles Autism Foundation. We've read about like the history of donuts, things like that. And we were reading a story. I can't remember what it was about. But, and then typically you say, okay, spell this word, this word, this word. And then there's like reading comprehension questions like, okay, I just use it in a sentence and you pick out one word and Declan will spell it. He totally has a photographic memory. It really is mind blowing. And my oldest was with us, and, I was working with him. Brooke had worked with him earlier, and then she turns it over to me and she coaches Dec and I. And then we got to this thing called a prior knowledge question. So it's a question where the answer was not in the passage that we read. And this was what's the capital of Canada? And I was like, I knew it because it was in front of me. And, Dec spelled out Ottawa without missing a beat. And all of this is recorded, which is amazing. And so, my oldest was like, Brendan was like, afterwards we talked a lot about it. He was like, Mom, how does he know that? And that's been the number one question I've gotten from other people too, is like from friends that I've shared these things with. It's like, but wait, how does he know this? And I think nobody knows. My thought, because he's my baby, is I just believe he was born this way. I believe he was born so gifted mentally, but has these other challenges that it's just been, we didn't see all of that. My husband thinks he has a photographic memory, which I don't disagree with, or that he's heard something one time and then he retains it. Like, it really is just mind blowing. And what my Brendan said was, when I said, like, something like he was born this way is my belief, he said something like, no, that's not possible. And I immediately was like, whoa. What, you can have a different opinion. That's perfectly fine. But what we can't ever do is use words like, no, that's impossible when it comes to Declan. I put him in a box for so long, and I sold him short for so long that it's just not even an option anymore. And that's why I was just trying to relay to my oldest, is that it's okay to have disbelief. It's okay to be on this journey where we're just figuring him out, but we have to be open to every single possibility. We have to be open to the fact that he was born this way. We have to be open to the fact that he has a photographic memory. We have to be open to the fact that he's going to cure cancer one day. We have to be open to the fact that he's going to be the first non-speaking orthodontist. All of these things we just have to be open to, and I won't let anyone have access to him that puts him in a box, or that thinks he can't do things, or say that's impossible and have Declan in the same sentence, right? Or be referring to Declan. No way. It's just not gonna happen. My sister actually bought Declan this book for Christmas, and it's amazing. It's the 50 states, and it has state capitals, state birds, it has the state flower, and they're alphabetized. And so the other day, the Ottawa question kind of got me thinking, and I was like, well, I'm saying he's a genius, but let's just see what he knows. I don't know. And I started asking him the state capitals. And then I moved to this, I was like, do you know the state abbreviations? Let's try those. And it's so fascinating because, and again, I'm now also videotaping every single session that we do so that no one can say it's not Declan. Now, I'm still coaching him on these letter boards. So I might say over, left, right, up, down, whatever it might be, over one, eyes on the board. But that is no different than Declan using this flip and talk that he uses at school to point to pictures. There's hand over hand modeling when they introduce that to him, or then the next step maybe is that the teacher will model it for him or point to it and then ask Declan to mimic her. So, the pushback of it not being Declan, I just don't even entertain. It's not in our realm, right? And if you do want to talk about that, just get off the bus, you're out. And I'd rather know from the beginning. But so anyhow, we started doing this, and I'm sending it to my sister, and I'm just I send her this video of him, and I was like, this is incredible. And to go back to the prompts, all of those things will fade. And ultimately, the goal is that once on these 3 stencil boards, he's pointing independently and accurately and precisely and slowly to each letter, then we move to the 26 letter board, which then again opens up and gives him access to everything, to sharing his thoughts, his feelings, and not restricted to pictures and not restricted to icons or phrases. He is literally going to spell out whatever he needs, whatever he's thinking, answers to questions, and that's the really exciting stuff. But I want to talk about one other thing we've been doing is we've had a couple meetings at school. I think Deck is described by all of his teachers as so lovable, not a behavioral issue or challenge. He doesn't have those types of things. The real severe ones, he might have a tantrum if you don't give him a second donut or something like that. But for the most part, he really is amicable, easygoing, amenable. He's all the things. He is just amazing. But he needs help with his daily needs. He's not there yet He's made tremendous strides, but he's not there yet as far as engaging with other kids, or, he still would much rather be around children is what I'm finding, but doesn't necessarily need to be like interacting with them on a consistent basis. And so, I think if left, he'll wander to the corner, and he's very happy. But so anyhow, we had a meeting, and I want to say first, this team has proven to me that they truly, truly care about Declan, and they are open to the journey that we are on with him. And, I think I'm probably pretty unique, and, me kind of hitting them right between the eyes from, I think, like our first IEP meeting, saying he's a genius and he's going to be valedictorian of his gen ed class, kind of put them back on their heels a little bit. But our second meeting that we had with, I think there were 8 people there, me, and then Tim was on the phone, dialed in. I could just tell they were so open. And several of them have told me that they've watched Spellers. They've taken the time to watch Spellers. One person on the team in particular has listened to some podcasts that I had sent her. I mean, things that I just really touched my heart, because these people don't have to do this. This is a job. But they have shown me how much they truly care about Declan and his well-being, and they want to be a part of his team. And I appreciate that so, so much. And even though the stuff I'm saying is different, they're open. But, one thing the school psychologist, she has to test him, and his output does fall into certain categories, and it falls into a category where he, according to the school, should be labeled intellectually disabled. And I recognize that had to be probably really difficult for her to say that to me, knowing, because this was in our second or third meeting, knowing where I was coming from as a parent, knowing where we're at with our journey. I'm shouting from the rooftop that my kid is a genius, and you're coming to me and saying you think he should be labeled, or the test is indicating that he should be labeled intellectually disabled. That couldn't have been easy for her. And she did it with a lot of respect, and I'm grateful for her. I recognize that this is the world that she lives in with the testing, and Dex testing does indicate that. I don't dispute that. But what I said is no, right? No, I'm not okay with that label being anywhere on his file. I fully not only believe, but I know that this may be what he's showing now, but the moment he truly becomes open with that letterboard and can communicate his own wants and needs, and also can communicate academically where he's at, he's not even he's in kindergarten right now. He knows all the states in alphabetical order. He knows the state capitals. He knows the state abbreviations, like I've said. I mean, that's not what a typical kindergartner knows. Declan's challenge, it's such a beautiful gift to have those cognitive abilities, but Declan's challenge is getting them out. And that's just, again, why we're working so hard to do that. Another thing that we've started doing is neurologically focused chiropractic care. An autism mom, she's been my first true autism mom friend. We met at Dr. Malillo's on my first visit. We instantly connected. Her son is around the age of my oldest, and very similar to Declan as far as non-speaking and mannerisms and those types of things. And so we just hit it off immediately. And I'm just so grateful for her. We've just, we've shared this bond that many can't understand. We've supported each other. We've kind of veered off on our own journeys a little bit with our boys, but I've always stayed in touch, even if we're not doing the same stuff for our kiddos. We've always just stayed in touch, and I think there's just this tremendous mutual respect for that, knowing that we both are fighting so hard for our kids, and we're outside the box. And so she sent me this podcast. I think it's called the Experience Miracles podcast. It's a chiropractor, this Dr. Tony Ebel. He really focuses on, I mean, he's a typical chiropractor, but he really focuses on the nervous system and regulating that, and believing that if that's really the foundation, and if that's not regulated, and if it's totally out of whack, everything else that we do for Declan is maybe not gonna work as much as it would if Declan maybe had a stronger foundation. And so, I started listening to the podcast. The guy has like crazy energy. I was kind of like, oh, I don't know. Like, he's kind of like used car salesman-ish, like is how he came across to me in the beginning. And, to my girlfriend's credit, I texted her. I was like, I don't know. I'm not sure I can get on board with him. Like, his energy is not sure. She was like, just trust your gut. Dude, if it doesn't work for you, trust your gut. And I was like, I love that. I appreciate that. But something just told me to keep listening, and now I'm like obsessed. And so I realized that his energy is passion, not only for helping his own son, which he openly shares the story of his oldest child, and his journeys with him. But I realized this is passion to help families and children, and so, I think it's called like PX Docs. I don't even know what it stands for, but like, there happens to be one in my city, which my girlfriend had sent me. It was like, there's one in your city, you need to go. She drives an hour every day to take her son. So she was like, this is right in your backyard. And so, my husband and I are like, we've got nothing to lose but money and maybe a little hope. Like, we're so on guard and cautious that it's like, all right, let's just try it. I'm not sure we're going to give this anything, but let's try it. And so we walked in day one to take him for his evaluation, and they were just so kind. It's a 2-dog practice. It's warm and welcoming. They spoke to Declan. They presume competence, which, as you know, is huge for me. And no one's allowed on his team that doesn't presume competence, and that doesn't treat Declan and talk to Declan directly. It's so important. And they did all those things, and we did the test. They did 3 different scans on him, and then jumped like right into his care. And so we started right after Christmas, and we're going daily. He's going daily, and we had a rescan after 7 sessions, and the numbers and the scans were just like mind-blowing. It was like, I'm a big data person, because I think like data doesn't lie, and I don't think you can manipulate that data. And so Tim and I were just like, okay, wow, this is crazy. Now, we haven't seen big changes in him yet. Again, we're 8 sessions in, I want to say. We also know that he's got pretty deep-rooted challenges with his nervous system. And I think he's been living in fight or flight for a long time. And so we also recognize that climbing out of that is not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 8 or 10 sessions. And so, we're really committed to this practice and to this group for the long haul, and we're really adding it to his repertoire of therapy, almost as like right now the primary thing, that and spelling, and the Malula method. We don't want to overwhelm his little body. We're giving him time to acclimate to these new adjustments. But more than anything, there are 2 awesome people that are now on Declan's bus as well. And I think that's one of the things I wanted to impart here on this episode is, again, when I started, I felt so alone and I felt scared and all these big things. And you're just supposed to navigate it. And you're just supposed to figure it out. And we did, and we tried our best. But it doesn't mean that it was without feeling like you were failing at many times, right? Or just not doing the right thing, or second guessing yourself. And so now having people part of Declan's team and that absolutely recognize how smart he is, absolutely recognize his many, many gifts. It's just like looking at him through a totally different lens. It's like seeing his abilities and not his disabilities. And, you know, when we first started this with him, I would just think like, okay, I love you so much. You're my child. Of course, mommy loves you. I'm never gonna let anyone hurt you or anything bad happen to you. And that was my positive, right? Like that was just, I'm mom, I'm your protector. My list of concerns and fears for Declan was like a mile long. And I had him back on this machine. We were doing the Melillo method one day and he was just standing there and I was lasering his brain. And I just looked at him and I was like, I just started rattling off all of his beautiful gifts. And I realized that like the scales had tipped. And now the mile list is all of his positives and his attributes and his gifts. And the one difficult challenge is that he still doesn't talk. But it's okay. Like, even though I'm crying and I want him to talk and I want to hear mom, it's okay if I don't. It really is, because I don't have those fears about him anymore. And, you know, do I worry about him in the long term being able to be independent and totally self-sufficient? Yeah, a little bit, but it's not stuff that keeps me up at night like it used to. It's so different. Again, my list of the mile long are all of his amazing, wonderful gifts and what he has brought to this family and how he has changed our entire lives for the better. Now, would I go back and erase autism from our life totally if I could at the beginning? It's such a hard question, because I feel like where we're at is where we're meant to be right now. And I feel like we're learning so many things from him. I think he is going to literally change the world. I know that he's had an impact on so many people already in his short 6 years of life. He has already touched the lives of so many people. And I just think he is just such a blessing. And you know, I shared one time that someone had said to me, someone really close to us had said, you know, you were dealt a hard hand. And I won't ever forget that. And I think that the best thing that support people can do is truly support, not conditionally, not look at it through a lens of pity or like a family was dealt a hard hand. At least that's my situation. Like I don't want anyone's pity. I like people's kindness and I appreciate people's kindness and their grace, because Declan is challenging sometimes. You know, we went over to a friend's house the other night to watch football and he just stripped down to his undies and he's like jumping on their couch, and they're just such amazing friends and they love Declan so much. They were like, yeah, whatever. I love that he's comfortable here in his underwear. Yeah, and it just doesn't happen all the time. And so, you know, it really is amazing when you find people that truly appreciate your child for who he is, and including his challenges, but also more than anything, focus on his gifts and his attributes. And that's where we're at right now. And so, you know, it's always, I think, going to be an emotional journey. I think when he's 50, God willing, and I'm still here, I think it's still going to probably bring me to tears talking about him, because it has been in 3 years, it has been such a ride of emotions, and such a swing to go from he meets the definition of mental retardation to no way, he's Stephen Hawking. Like, that's just hard to process. Like, it's amazing, and I'm so grateful. And I wouldn't change that at all. I will take this any day. But I think that big emotional swing is like, is just so hard to process as a parent, a mom, and you're doing that all while you're like also still living life. So I mean, so much goes into this, but again, I just share his story because I want other moms to know, if your kid is a non-speaker, an unreliable speaker, a minimal speaker, find them a mode of communication. That would be the first thing that I started with Declan, if I could go back and do it all over again. I have no regrets. I think I'm always a believer that things happen the way they're meant to happen. And I'm so grateful for where we are today. I'm so excited for his future. Hindsight's 2020. So are there things that I would do differently? Sure. A lot, but I wouldn't have moved to Florida and done MERT treatment, for 8 weeks and spent thousands and thousands of dollars doing that. I would make sure I know who I'm engaging with. I know now the questions to ask. I am very upfront. I've got confidence in myself that I drive his bus. And I didn't have that in the beginning. I thought I was going to give the keys to the developmental pediatrician or the pediatrician or the school psychologist, whomever. I didn't realize it was going to be me driving his bus. But once I did, and once I got my confidence to do that, there's no stopping Declan. He's crushing it. And if you have a non-speaker, just believe in them. Talk to them as if they respond. Who cares what they say? That's what I say to my oldest. Just talk to him. He may not verbally respond right now, but he clearly knows everything we're saying. I want him to always feel like he is a valued member of our family and not like he's just there. And once we get to open communication, he's gonna be able to share what he wants for dinner or how he's feeling or how his day at school was. Those are all the things that I just look so forward to. And I can't wait for them to come, but I also know we need to build the strong foundation to get him there, which is what we're working so hard to do. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. There's support out there. I would certainly recommend watching the Spellers documentary if you haven't already done so. If you're local in Charleston, there's going to be a screening on February 15th at 2 p.m. at the downtown library. And I just hope we will get a great turnout. My vision for him, first of all, it's limitless, but I envision him surrounded by other non-speakers, letterboarding, typing, whatever it might be, but living a full life, full meaningful life that is the greatest gift of all. Whether he talks or not, that's the minutia. Would I love it? Yes, for sure. But it is not the most important thing to me. The most important thing to me as his mom is that he has a mode of communication that is accepted, respected, and no one questions. And he's getting there, which is just so exciting. But all right, I want to thank you all for your time today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks. Bye.